Here is a question nobody asks. You book a flight, you see the base fare, then the taxes, then the fees, and by the time you hit confirm, the ticket costs almost double what you started with. Most people blame the airline, but here is what is actually happening. A huge chunk of what you are paying before the airline makes a single rupee goes to the government in the form of a tax on the fuel inside the plane. It's called ATF, Aviation Turbine Fuel, and India taxes it in a way that almost no other country in the world does. This is the story of the one cost that makes every Indian flight more expensive and why nobody in power seems to want to fix it. ATF is basically jet fuel. Every commercial aircraft runs on it. Fuel is already the single biggest operating cost for any airline. Globally, it accounts for about 20 to 25% of what an airline spends, but in India, that number is closer to 40%. That gap does not exist because India has worse aircraft or less efficient engines. It exists because of how India taxes the fuel that goes into those aircrafts. And right now, in May 2026, with the West Asia conflict pushing crude oil prices to around $111 a barrel, this problem has gone from bad to a genuine crisis.
The war in Iran has caused oil and gas prices to spike, and it's not just affecting cars on the road. A recent analysis by Deutsche Bank shows those rising oil prices are also leading to airlines hiking their ticket prices. The analysis also warns airlines may start reducing flights and grounding planes altogether if the cost of jet fuel continues to grow.
The Federation of Indian Airlines just wrote to the government saying that the industry is, in their own words, on the verge of closing down. To understand why, you need to understand how ATF is actually priced in India. Part 1. The price problem. ATF in India right now costs around 1,04,927 rupees per kilolitre for domestic airlines. That number alone doesn't mean much. So here is the comparison that does. Airlines refueling in Dubai, Singapore or Kuala Lumpur pay significantly less for the same fuel, and here is the part that makes this genuinely absurd. India is not an ATF importing country. India produces enough jet fuel domestically. Its refineries make more than what the country consumes. And yet India prices ATF using what is called the import parity principle, which means the government calculates the price as if the fuel were being imported from the Gulf, including notional freight, insurance and customs duties on fuel that was never imported. So Indian airlines are paying for an import that didn't happen, on fuel that was refined right here, and that artificially inflated base price is what all the taxes then stack on top of. Part 2. The tax layers. This is where it gets layered. First, there is a central excise duty levied by the union government on ATF. Then there is a state VAT levied separately by each state government, and this is where it gets chaotic because every state charges a different rate. Delhi charges around 25% VAT on ATF, UP charges around 1%, Maharashtra around 18%. Some northeastern states charge even more. So the same fuel, the same aircraft, the same route costs a completely different amount depending on which airport the airline refuels at. Here is a real example. A typical narrow-body aircraft on a Delhi-Mumbai route burns around 4 tons of fuel. With Delhi's 25% VAT, that adds roughly 96,000 rupees in tax per flight just from state VAT alone. At Jewar Airport in UP, the new airport just opened near Noida. That same refuel would attract a fraction of that tax. Airlines have already started thinking about which airports they refuel at based on state tax rates. That is how distorted this has become. And critically, ATF is not under GST. Every other major input in the economy gets the benefit of a unified goods and services tax. ATF doesn't. It sits outside the GST framework, which means airlines cannot claim input tax credits, and the cascading effect of multiple taxes, central plus state, hits the final price without any offset. Part 3. Why nobody fixes it. So the obvious question is, why hasn't this been fixed? The short answer is money. ATF taxes are a meaningful revenue source for state governments. States are not going to voluntarily cut a tax that earns them revenue, especially when aviation is seen as a service used by people who can afford to fly. There is also no political urgency. Reducing ATF tax does not win votes the way a free scheme or a subsidy does. It is an invisible structural reform that makes flights cheaper slowly, not a headline you can point to at the next election. The aviation industry has been asking for ATF to be brought under GST for over a decade. The argument is simple: put it in GST at a uniform rate, let airlines claim input tax credits, eliminate the state by state chaos. Ticket prices come down, airlines become viable, more people fly, and states collect GST revenue instead of VAT revenue. It makes sense on paper, and it has not happened. Willie Walsh, now Indigo's incoming CEO, spent 5 years at IATA publicly calling out India's ATF taxation as one of the biggest structural problems in Indian aviation. He said it from the global stage repeatedly. Now he is about to run the airline that pays this tax every single day. Whether that changes anything, we shall see. Part 4, the crisis right now. This matters more today than it has in years. The West Asia conflict has pushed Brent crude to around $111 a barrel, up from about $65 before the escalation. Every time crude goes up, ATF goes up, and in India, that increase hits harder than almost anywhere else because the tax layers amplify the base price movement. In April 2026, ATF prices for domestic airlines jumped 25% in a single month. The government actually had to cap the increase at 25% because without the cap, the spike would have been even steeper. The Federation of Indian Airlines, which represents Air India, Indigo, and SpiceJet, wrote to the government warning that the industry is on the verge of collapse and that continuing fuel price rises could force airlines to ground aircraft or cancel flights. That is not a threat made lightly. This is what happens when a structurally broken fuel pricing system meets a global oil shock at the same time. Every rupee of ATF tax that an airline pays eventually finds its way into your ticket. Airlines don't absorb these costs. They can't, they pass them on. Through the base fare, through fuel surcharges, through the convenience fees that quietly appear at checkout. When you wonder why Indian flights don't feel cheap despite the market growing so fast, this is a big part of that answer. It is not just demand, it is not just airline pricing strategy, it is a tax structure that has been unreformed for decades that treats jet fuel as a revenue opportunity rather than as an infrastructure cost. Until ATF comes under GST or states meaningfully reduce their VAT rates, Indian Airlines will keep operating with one of the highest fuel cost burdens in the world. And the person paying for that ultimately is you. ATF is not a glamorous topic, nobody talks about it at dinner, but it sits underneath every Indian flight, every fare hike, every fuel surcharge you have ever paid. Here is my question for you. Do you think the government will ever bring ATF under GST, or is this one of those problems that gets discussed forever and never actually gets solved? Tell me what you think in the comments. New video every Thursday at 7 pm. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.